We can see it. Oh, thank you. That's sorry.
Okay, so I'm not going to necessarily read from the slides. I'll just do some talking and give you guys an opportunity to read the material as I'm talking. So I think most of you are aware, who are the activists and advocates and leaders around the Right to Counsel movement. This community board was central to the formation of early advocacy around right to counsel. And one of the newest developments is that among the coalition now we include small property owners who learn something about their relationship to tenants during the COVID emergency. And also the tenant movement learned something about small property owners in that they are not the primary evictors in most situations. So we're now really trying to rethink right to counsel to include additional funding to support small property owners who are facing foreclosure. You will recall back in 2017, a local law was passed for right to counsel that included a limited number of zip codes. Fortunately, one of the zip codes was 10027 because Mark Levine sponsored the bill. It was important to me as a member of the Central Harlem community. We were actually able to take advantage of the bill. And for those of you who are part of this board and don't remember, the legal intake office was actually located in the community board office. I think they met there once a month or once a week or something like that. So what's happening with right to counsel now is that with the local law passed, everything was going well during the before and during the COVID emergency when there were limited amount of court activity due to the eviction moratoriums, and also a limited amount of intake because we were only working with certain zip codes throughout the city. Once the law was amended to include all zip codes, and we actually also raised the income threshold, not that much, but it was raised. Those events intersected with the expiration of the eviction moratorium, and it created a problem whereby there wasn't sufficient capacity among the legal service providers to actually meet the demand. In addition to that, we learned that the administrative arm of the local law wasn't enough to fulfill the legislative intent of the local law. And so we needed a state law in order to have a structure that could enforce the courts, which are ruled by state law. Even though we have a local law that covers all of our zip codes in the city, the courts are not obligated to honor that law, and the administrative arm, in many ways, is curtailing the legislative intent. And so we're hoping that a statewide bill with a state agency that would be formed as a consequence of that bill will help us achieve the original legislative intent for universal representation. In addition to the statewide bill, we have a bill that was just recently drafted with support from Assemblywoman Rosenthal and Senator Hoylman. The Defend Right to Counsel, which is essentially an adjournment bill that basically instructs the courts to extend adjournments to to defenders in housing court who are eligible for right to counsel. So not everyone would get protections from this law, only those people that are already deemed eligible. I think I'll pass on the statistics. I'll just speak a little bit about my own experiences. One of the things that I do as part of the Right to Counsel Coalition is I go to housing court every Wednesday to talk to people in the hallways and try to help them figure out strategies and tactics to avoid being sent to trial. So, because once a person is sent to trial, it's almost too late to save them. And so there's a lot of strategies that can be put to work to help people stay in the pretrial phase of their court appearances until they are, that they get off the waiting list and are finally have representation. My experience in housing court is, first and foremost, the minute you start a case without counsel, you lose, because there's always some administrative problem within the plaintiff's legal papers that can be used to either dismiss or change the nature of the leverage around a case. And particularly in holdover proceedings, I find that almost all tenants in holdover proceedings are evicted, and almost no tenants in holdover proceedings are evicted when they have legal representation to help them with either a residency defense or a secession defense. Cases around non-payment are a little different in that if you owe, you owe. There are certain resources available to try and get help. But one way of countering a non-payment case is through the warranty of habitability proceeding, which almost always requires a lawyer to handle that kind of complicated case. And so oftentimes tenants with severe code violations in a non-payment proceeding usually will sign stipulations without realizing that they can get the money that they owe dramatically reduced based on a warranty of habitability proceeding. And so that's the gist of the work we're doing. I'm happy to talk to you about the budget or any other, the administration of the bill or the budget or any other questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh, you're going for youth education. Before you forgot your purse. Oh, yeah, your purse. Your purse. Yeah. Your purse. Oh.
You guys can have it.
I was very interested in what was going on, though. Next time we watch you in this one, okay?
I'm gonna have to come back because also I work for the state of New York and I deal with people with developmental disabilities, and there's a lot of us, well, so a lot of my clients in the community, and they have a lot of issues, not necessarily with housing, but just being a part of the community. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we don't see them because we try to provide assistance for them, but our guys, our clients don't feel a part of it. I would like to discuss that the next time I come.
Yeah. Come to our general board too. Yeah, that's third Thursday of every month. It's 2 days though.
No, it's not.
Yeah, this Thursday.
Yeah, it's this Thursday. Yeah, it is. All right, sorry, the small caveat. Thank you so much. Sorry, Greg. So we're opening to questions, but very quick. Yeah.
Oh, I had a question.
You have a question for? Okay.
So You mentioned something about small landlords and foreclosure.
Yeah.
But in the bills that you outlined in your presentation, in the 27, 21 and 3245, 3245 is the adjournments one, and then 2721 is the statewide one. I don't see anything in there about foreclosures and homeowners or property owners. Is that in a different bill, or?
No, it won't be a different bill. What we are waiting, we're going to end up adding additional language, because adding the small property owners will also require a substantial budget bump. And so we need to work out the numbers for the budget before we actually add that language.
So I guess one question is that targeted like towards homeowners? Like if I were upstate or in Queens and I owned my home and it's a single family home, would that be one of the people that would, you know, if I were getting foreclosed by my bank or the city for unpaid debt, like property tax or water, would I then, is that who would benefit from these right to counsel services, or who's the intended recipient of those expanded services?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different intent happening. So I think the initial impulse was to deal with small property owners in our districts where there was a lot of resistance from elected officials who had lots of small property owners in their district. At the same time, Senator Kavanaugh recognized that by recognizing or including small property owners, we would actually attract more support, because the bill would then be opened up to people who own family homes, as well as small property owners upstate as well. So it would be inclusive of all. I think what the real contest of power around small property owners will be whether or not we will use, let's say, the definition that's currently being used with good cause, which won't be good enough, or will we use that conventional definition that those properties that are excluded from rent stabilization. And quite frankly, that definition won't be good enough, because in districts like Community Board 9 and Community Board 10, there are lots of property owners who are living in a sort of a family home type brownstone that still may be a registered SRO. So there may be 10 units in the building, but the family is occupying the building as a single family. So we don't know where that contest of power will end, but it will be somewhere between the number 4 and 10.
So
preferably 10.
I guess I have a couple of clarifying questions. One, would anything in that expanded bill that encompasses property owners be they wouldn't be getting representation to evict a tenant or a boarder? Like if it were a family home and you were renting a room and you wanted to evict them, you wouldn't qualify for an attorney to help evict someone, would you?
No, the bill probably would have passed by now if that was the case. But no, the right to counsel. It's not there to protect landlords who are trying to evict tenants as well. That's not what we find is that landlords, and particularly corporate landlords, rarely come to court without counsel. So there's no need to provide legal counsel to landlords who are doing eviction proceedings. The idea is to offer small property owners protection from eviction as well. That is protection from eviction vis-a-vis a foreclosure.
Okay, so if I owned an HDFC cooperative unit and I was behind on my maintenance and faced with foreclosure from either the bank or my co-op, I would be entitled to counsel if I met the income requirements under this expanded foreclosure.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I'm involved, I'll make sure that language is there. And one of the things that you might want to do is talk to the HDFC boards about whether or not that's something that is a welcome resource, because I remember we were instrumental in getting tenants in HDFCs protection under the Housing Stability Tenant Protection Act. And lo and behold, I thought it was a great thing. I had lobbied for it, and eventually it came to fruition. And it ended up being a problem for the HDFC boards that needed the tenants to subsidize the shareholders. So the question you're asking, Barry, is good, because it could ultimately lead to a scenario where a shareholder could use right to counsel to initiate an Article 78 proceeding against a board. So that's something that we need to sort out before it's all said and done. And let me say, in most cases, the HDFC community would be left out of these discussions if persons like you and I and Tiffany and Marie that I see on this call aren't around raising the issue.
No, I was just asking because, we can read the text of the pending legislation, but if we're going to address small property owners in our reso, we'd want to have some idea of what the intention was. So those were all my questions. You answered them. Thank you.
I thank you for the questions, and I would urge you maybe to maybe opt for a letter of support that strictly, gives a very strong directive on your position around small property owners. That would be some welcome content rather than the resolution. Or you can add a provision in the resolution as what we, this one from Community Board 10, but I did send the district manager the draft template. It might be in a set of an email that I sent last week, but she does have the draft template that you can amend as you see fit.
Okay.
And let me know if somebody from the HDFC Coalition wants to join Right to Counsel. That would be helpful as well.
Yeah, Juan, go ahead. I'm gonna ask.
Everything is in English here, and I don't see. I just saw one thing about this lady in one of your pictures, who has a sign in Spanish. Is this system all in Spanish and English, or do you have other languages that
we have material and literature in. I think they tend to follow the language justice directive. So I think there are 5 different languages that the literature is in. I'm looking at one of the pieces of literature that gives the difference between you can't see it, between the state and the city bill. And there's a Spanish and English version of that. I apologize for not bringing the presentation in other languages. I can submit a copy to the board. I'm very sensitive about this issue. I just attended Community Board 10 meeting where we had a Dominican business owner come to one of our meetings, and there was absolutely no one available to effectively communicate with him. So yeah, I apologize, but I certainly will make good on the promise to get the material to the district manager.
Yeah, my question was not about your literature, it was about these people in the yellow shirts that are, they seem like defenders of equal community right of council. And they look very diverse, but I'm wondering how many languages are you able to provide? I guess my question is, how many languages do you have people who are able to communicate it, right?
I think if you look up the language, if you look up the language injustice report from the Civic Engagement Commission, those are the languages that we would be producing different material in.
Got it.
I can put the link maybe in the chat for you.
Cool. So that said, are there any further questions before we move on? No further questions? So then we're going to have this as an action item later, but do we want to discuss any edits or discussion on this now, or do we want to wait till action items?
I'll wait till action items.
Wait till action items? All right.
Yeah, let's wait.
All righty. Thank you so much. We'll further discuss the action items here, and yeah, let's see. What's next?
Zoning text
Right.
amendment.
This one is a bit lengthy, so we wanted to make sure we got some time in for this. I hope committee members that got this ahead of time were able to take a look so you could form some of your questions. Liz and I took a look last night. I'll look through our questions as we go here. But Audrey, the stage is yours. Audrey is from DCP and she's going to walk us through. This is a set of 3 text amendments. This is the second of a set. 8. Oh yeah. Of 3, and this is part of the City of Yes that the mayor has been proposing. So Audrey, why don't you take it away? Are you able to share your screen?
Liz, can you turn
Yes,
on?
thank you for the introduction. I'm just getting the PowerPoint set up here. Just give me one moment.
You got it.
I think you just click it.
Please unmute.
You're on mute, Audrey.
Sorry about that. Thanks for bearing with me with my technical difficulties. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's get started. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about the City of Yes for economic opportunity. My name is Audrey Walks. I'm a liaison to Community Board 9, and tonight I'm joined by Jose Trucios, who is the Upper Manhattan team leader. The citywide text amendment we'll be discussing today is the second of 3 text amendments in the City of Yes initiative. Excuse me. The first was zoning for carbon neutrality, which was referred back in the spring. And the third and final citywide text amendment following CEO will be zoning for housing opportunity, which should go public in the spring. This is probably common knowledge to most people in this meeting, but I wanted to begin by briefly talking about how zoning relates to business before diving into the proposals. So zoning defines hundreds of uses grouped by business type. And these are further sorted into use groups, of which there are 16 in the zoning resolution. And these 16 use groups are in turn regulated by zoning district. In this way, zoning dictates the kind of business activities that can be conducted in a given space, as well as the size of a business. If you ask most business owners, New York, they might say that New York can be a tough place to run a business. Unfortunately, zoning often doesn't help these business owners. The zoning resolution often precludes the citing of prospective businesses outright, or imposes a challenging set of rules, such as preventing a bar from advertising the time a live music will play, or setting a strict cap on the amount of floor area a bakery can devote to baking. The current zoning resolution is 60 years old, and it hasn't entirely kept up with the times, especially regarding the city's changing retail landscape and economy. The aim of this text amendment is to make the zoning resolution simpler, more adaptable, and modern, to make sure that the zoning works for our city's economy and not against it. This text would apply to all 5 boroughs and all 59 community districts. But tonight, we're really going to try to focus as much as possible on what this would mean for Community District 9. We'll run through the proposals, connecting it back to the district whenever we can. Here, you can see the proposals are grouped into 4 overarching goals. First, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space to grow by lifting zoning barriers so businesses can locate closer to their customers. Second, we want to support emerging industries. Third, we want to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring that businesses contribute to safe, active, and walkable streets. And fourth, we want to create opportunities for future and emerging business categories via new zoning tools. I want to begin with a high-level contextualization of employment and retail conditions in the area. So there are about 46,500 jobs in the district, with most of those jobs concentrated in the institutional macro sector, which covers education and healthcare. And a lot of these jobs are with or adjacent to Columbia University. Private sector employment right now is at 99% of its pre-pandemic level. So this signifies nearly a full jobs recovery, which is higher than the Manhattan economic recovery and on pace with the city's recovery overall. Zooming into the ground level, there are about 1,300 storefronts in the district that are located on neighborhood less traveled streets, as well as commercial corridors, as you can see on this map here. About 10% of these storefronts are vacant, which is a rate that is lower than both the Manhattan average and the city's overall. We see concentrations of vacancy along West 145th Street and other notable pockets along Broadway. If you're interested in exploring this more, I encourage you to look at Live XYZ, an interactive map that depicts streetscape conditions in the city. When I'm done with my presentation, I'll drop the link in the chat. And I'd invite you to keep these figures and images in mind as we go through the ZEO proposals. While zoning isn't going to fix all of these conditions, we believe that it is a step towards addressing them. So goal 1 includes 6 proposals on storefront reactivation, simplifying district types, encouraging small-scale production, modernizing loading docks, allowing upper floor commercial uses, and simplifying use terms. Proposal 1 centers on vacant storefronts. Today, storefronts that are deemed non-conforming face a 2-year time clock to re-tenant the space, or else the storefront has to remain vacant. section, the zoning resolution 52-61 removes this clock, but it doesn't remove it in high density districts R8 through R10, which are widely mapped in the southern and western portions of CD9. So you can see here this deli at LaSalle Street and Broadway. It's zoned R8, but not in a commercial overlay. So if the deli closed and the storefront the storefront was not able to be leased again within this 2-year time clock, it could not be reoccupied under current zoning. This proposal would also expand the existing vacant storefront rules to all residence districts and historic districts, as seen here in green. Proposal 2 is about simplifying regulations for our commercial streets by allowing consistent uses in similar zoning districts. So within the district and throughout the city, C1 and C2 commercial overlays facilitate ground floor and sometimes second story retail in otherwise residential districts. However, C1 districts face restrictions on uses that often don't make a lot of sense. So this picture here shows a dividing line between a C1 district and a C2 district on West 79th Street. Under current zoning, you could own a hardware store in the C1 or the C2 district, but if your hardware store were in the C2 district, you couldn't, for example, open up a compatible business right next door. You couldn't open a business like a small appliance repair shop or a small lumber shop or a small window blind repair store because it would not be compatible with that district's use. So to address this issue, the proposal intends to collapse permitted use groups in C1 and C2 overlays. This would open C1 overlays up to use groups 7, 8, and 9, including home maintenance uses like the ones I just mentioned, entertainment uses such as movie theaters, and business uses such as printers. C1 overlays are more widely mapped on Broadway in Amsterdam, whereas C2 overlays are more common on 125th Street and a small portion of Amsterdam Avenue north of West 150th Street.
Audrey, hold for a second.
Yeah.
Can you go back? No, yeah.
What are transient accommodations in C2 overlays?
So Barry, I appreciate the question. Is it okay if we hold questions until the end? Just because there's a lot of material to cover and I'd like to be able to address each question.
If people want to put questions in the chat to help us, online with keeping track, I'll try to, I'll write down what we have, you, me, Liz, and we'll ask at the end. So keep track of your questions, folks.
Well, thank you. So as part of proposal 2, we're also removing restrictions on certain uses allowed in C4 and C5 districts from locating on the ground floor. These would be uses like a dance studio, for example, that are currently restricted from ground floor occupancy. This proposal might have a less of an impact on CD9 because there's no C5 in the area, and C4 is only mapped on about 2.5 blocks between West 126, St. Nick, Hancock Place, and Morningside Avenue. So the same principle is applied to rethinking permitted uses in C4 and C6 commercial districts. Which are centrally located business districts. In addition to the C4 I just mentioned, in CB9, there's a C6 district mapped under Riverside, West 133rd, Broadway, and 125th Street, as well as a handful of zoning lots on the corners of Broadway and West 145th. So the 1961 zoning resolution, our current zoning resolution, has a strict separation of manufacturing uses. However, in recent decades, small-scale clean production industries have emerged like pottery studios, bakeries, coffee roasters, jewelry makers, apparel designers, and 3D printers. This proposal would allow these maker businesses to locate in commercial districts. These businesses would be subject to environmental standards to ensure that they are not negatively impacting neighbors. In neighborhood commercial corridors, C1 and C2 districts, usually, clean production could locate up to 5,000 square feet in size. And in higher density or more centrally located business districts, C4 to C6, these businesses could be up to 10,000 square feet on the ground floor. So in the case of other uses like baking, just to give one example, bakeries are currently only allowed to devote 750 square feet to production. So this would raise some of the, or eliminate some of the barriers to helping these businesses grow. So moving on to proposal 4, so right now, there's off-street parking regulations, which are pretty static after a development is completed. Loading dock requirements are based on the current use. I'm so sorry. So let me back up one second. Loading dock requirements are based on current use of the occupied building. So certain changes in occupancy might trigger a requirement for additional loading docks in an existing building, even if they're not strictly necessary or if the building can't physically accommodate them. This would allow for a greater range of tenant occupancy in older commercial buildings, which predate the requirement. Today, zoning allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses, but zoning sometimes restricts businesses on upper stories. This limits options for new buildings to host both residences and businesses, or for older buildings to adapt over time. Today, you can find doctor's offices, for example, on the second floor in a commercial overlay in a residential district, but not most other types of uses. So we want to enable renovations or new construction of mixed-use buildings in certain places, allowing commercial uses at the same level or above residences, provided that a complete separation of uses is maintained. The zoning resolution has antiquated business classifications like typewriter repair, which is obviously outdated. It doesn't have language, on the other hand, for newer business types like cell phone repair shops. And this can make it really hard for some businesses to know where they can locate under current zoning. So we're proposing to modernize and simplify the terms we use in zoning to classify businesses with the same system that is used right now by the federal government. So on to our second goal. We're going to talk about emerging business types. Each of these industries highlighted in the second goal, urban agriculture, life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and home occupations, home-based businesses encounter many zoning obstacles right now. Which brings us to proposal 7. Right now, indoor agriculture is only permitted in manufacturing districts. This regulation hasn't kept pace with new advances such as hydroponic farming, which would allow food to be grown closer to communities. Similarly, businesses that process food or manufacture value-added food products, like for example, turning vegetables into salsa, are restricted to M zones. So consequently, this proposal would clarify how enclosure rules work to ensure that businesses with passive outdoor spaces, such as florists, can operate. And it would also permit agriculture indoors in C districts. So life sciences is a fast-growing industry that the city has been cultivating for years. But right now, life science laboratories face confusing and outdated rules that slow down the development of new facilities. We would make it clear that labs without the potential for environmental hazard are appropriate in office settings. And we'd also expand where an existing special permit can be used so that labs might be able to locate in the future closer to research centers like hospitals and universities. So I just want to put a pin in the fact that labs are already one of the most highly regulated uses for safety. So these existing safety rules would apply to labs in new areas as well. So proposal number 9 is all about nightlife. Right now, restaurants and bars face confusing regulations on where they can host concerts, have dancing, comedy shows, or open mic nights. We're simplifying the rules so these activities are based on the size of the venue rather than the activity, so that you'd only see small venues in neighborhood commercial corridors and larger venues perhaps on places like 125th Street. Today, for example, a restaurant like Hamilton Hall can have live music in any commercial district, whether that live music takes the form of a background dinner accompaniment or a full band with amplified sound. However, zoning places arbitrary restrictions on the type of activity related to that music within the establishment. So in this case, in the C14 overlay, that in which Hamilton Hall is located, the business adheres to use group 6. This means that it can't charge a cover or advertise a showtime. Its capacity was less than 200 people. So, and in this circumstance, or within the venue, people can listen to the music according to this use group, but they can't dance to it. We at DCP think that these arbitrary rules don't make a lot of sense. So as this example illustrates, it's still illegal in certain areas under zoning to dance in a bar, club, or restaurant, even though the city council repealed the cabaret law a few years ago. New York City has a long history of discriminatory practices regarding nightlife and zoning. So this is a relic. These current zoning regulations are somewhat of a relic of this past and how they continue to restrict ticketed music, comedy, and dancing in many locations. The proposal will shift regulations from the type of entertainment to the capacity of the establishment. Whether an establishment can charge covers or host dancing will likewise be based on capacity. So what that means is that live comedy, DJs, dancing, and ticketed events would now be treated the same under zoning, but venues would have their occupancy limited to 200 people, roughly the size of a regular storefront when locating in neighborhood commercial districts and commercial overlays. Bigger venues like the Cotton Club on 125th Street would be limited to C4 and C6 districts. So we know that bars and restaurants can create concerns in neighborhoods around noise and other nuisances. So we want to let you know that we've been working closely with our colleagues at the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and other city agencies to protect the quality of life for all New Yorkers. And DOB and FDNY rules around safety and occupancy, as well as DEP rules for amplified sound and community board stipulations during the liquor licensing process will all be in place and in effect to ensure that these venues are being good neighbors. And programs like MEND near NYC can step in to mediate any lingering issues that may arise between nightlife venues and community members. It's long past due to repeal the cabaret law, and this proposal finishes the job while keeping nightlife venues small in neighborhood settings. In that same vein, Proposal 10 considers amusement businesses and the zoning definition of amusement. This proposal would introduce a new definition for amusement to encompass uses like virtual reality or children's arcades, which are often restricted to businesses in this category are often restricted to areas like Coney Island or the city's industrial areas. So we would simplify and modernize how zoning treats amusements and recreational activities to make clear that these businesses are allowed indoors and at small scale on a neighborhood street and at a larger scale in office districts. So moving on to proposal 11, we all probably know someone who has started a business in their home or who currently operates a business in their home. And today zoning allows for a wide range of home business types, including lawyers, jewelry makers, and music teachers, but it specifically prohibits occupations like barbers or interior decorators. There are also strict floor area caps on how much of a residence can be devoted to a home business use. So this proposal would remove the list of currently prohibited business types, expanding the size allowance from the current 25% of one's home that's allowed to be used for a business to a proposed 49% of the home, and allow up to 3 employees to be associated with the home-based business. These proposals would still maintain existing noise and environmental rules, signage limits, and impose the same restrictions on selling items that are not produced on site. So moving on to our third goal. Our third goal is to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Inconsistency in existing streetscape regulations, or in some cases, a total absence of zoning rules, means there is no way to curb some of the worst outcomes of a business activity spilling out onto the public right-of-way or creating unpleasant and unsafe conditions for pedestrians and cyclists. Our 3 proposals in this goal are designed to ensure that businesses contribute to safe, active, and walkable streets. In vast parts of the city, there are no rules whatsoever to prevent new buildings from making streetscapes worse. So we're proposing consistent baseline commercial ground floor designs that are more pedestrian-friendly in walkable areas and more relaxed in the city's more auto-oriented corridors. This means implementing consistent rules about transparency, ground floor design, street tree planting, and curb cut locations. Most of these are already in effect in Community District 9 as well. But let's dive into the 3 tiers that are part of this proposal. So these 3 tiers are cumulative and they would apply to new construction, but also would apply to projects where there's a significant alteration that requires a DOB sign off. As you can see, only tier B and tier C apply to CB9. So the Rite Aid on the previous slide at 145th and Broadway would be in a tier B area. Tier B areas, among other changes, this is just one example. The length of blank walls for new buildings would be limited and all parking would have to be enclosed and screened and wrapped by floor area. So in addition, these frontages would have ground floor use requirements, which would permit a wide range of active uses. They'd also have transparency requirements and maximum lobby dimensions. The Forum at Columbia University, also shown on the previous slide, is in a C6-1 district, as well as the special Manhattanville mixed-use district. Under the proposed rules, the building would be in a tier C district. The proposal would maintain the existing high-level streetscapes that are not, or sorry, would maintain high-level streetscapes that are not otherwise protected by special districts by designating them as these tier C frontages. Areas like the special Manhattanville mixed-use district already have a robust set of streetscape regulations, and these would not be modified by the proposal. So proposal 13, right now, auto repair businesses are typically treated as industrial businesses and are located far from retail streets and residential neighborhoods. But some exceptions allow certain types of auto repair to locate in C2 and C4 districts, which creates safety concerns for pedestrians. We're proposing a consolidation of these uses into two categories, light and heavy vehicle repair and maintenance. Heavy vehicle maintenance must be licensed by the state DMV and would continue to be allowed in industrial areas, while light vehicle repair could locate in C1 to C7 districts, and but only by BSA special permit. So Proposal 14 addresses sustainable deliveries and micro distribution networks. Right now, zoning doesn't allow for delivery within buildings except in industrial areas, forcing that activity to occur on sidewalks and streets. So we're proposing a new use called micro distribution facility that would allow these buildings to locate at a small scale in commercial areas, which should encourage deliveries to shift to non-truck transit and spur the creation of local hubs for sustainable deliveries. So on to our fourth and final goal, which includes 4 proposals that create or aim to create new kinds of discretionary zoning tools to facilitate business expansion, including BSA permits, CPC permits, and new zoning districts. So many large-scale residential developments, such as NYCHA campuses, are zoned as residence districts, meaning that retail services and maker spaces can't easily locate, which is a feature that places residents of these developments further away from local goods and services. This proposal would create a CPC authorization to allow up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space in existing or new construction on large-scale residential campuses, giving residents greater access to basic necessities or the space to grow a new business. So in parts of the city where we don't have commercial zoning, there's no other way than a full neighborhood-wide rezoning to allow for a new storefront space where a bodega or other neighborhood-serving business could locate. This is a pretty limited condition in CB9, with Hamilton Terrace, a very short street, being the most prominent example, but it's worth noting regardless. So here's what the proposal entails. It would create a pathway that might allow for like new corner stores or this coffee shop, as you can see on the east side. But it would only allow for these types of businesses in certain circumstances. The commercial space would have to be under 2,500 square feet, and it would have to be located within 100 feet of an intersection, providing access to local goods and services, but not turning a residential street into a commercial corridor. The process to allow for these new storefront spaces would be discretionary, meaning it's subject to community board and CPC approval. So we think this proposal strikes a reasonable balance of giving more New Yorkers the ability to walk to pick up a basic necessity or a coffee, while giving the community a say in where these storefronts can go. So in situations where new or growing businesses are looking to construct new buildings, they often run into zoning issues that limit the shape of their buildings. For example, many film studios have struggled with zoning regulations like minimum heights that a building has to hit before it starts having to do a setback towards the center. So to address these kinds of zoning barriers, we're creating a pathway in zoning where if a business can locate in a district already, but it can't build the form of the building that it wants, they can appeal to the City Planning Commission for relief from that zoning restriction. Our 18th and final proposal is this, creating new kinds of zoning districts for the future. In some instances, zoning districts are obsolete, as we've noted many times. This is particularly true, however, of our city's manufacturing districts. The zoning resolution now effectively banned, the 1961 zoning resolution effectively banned the loft style industrial buildings that we see in places like Soho in favor of low slung buildings with low lot coverages and high parking requirements. This typology doesn't make sense in the context of Manhattan in particular, and especially now that there's increased interest from those engaged in maker type manufacturing for these loft type spaces. So this proposal will create a range of new job intensive zoning districts at a range of densities and heights that expand the zoning toolkit for future rezonings. You can see here the proposed districts. They are 3 new kinds of M districts and 1 new kind of commercial district. It's important to note that none of these districts are actually being mapped as part of this proposal, but since CD9 does have 2 M districts, it's worth considering the appropriateness of any of these districts relative to CB9's existing M zones. So the first proposal would be an M3A or core industrial district. This would be a district that for the first time restricts the FAR of all non-industrial uses while giving industrial businesses the room they need to grow. The core district is a critical tool for ensuring the preservation of industrial businesses, and it's one that's appropriate in areas where we do not want to see a transformation outside of industrial. So our second new tool would be an M2A transition district. This district is designed to incentivize the creation of new space that is guaranteed for industrial uses, allowing a mix of business types to cross-subsidize the creation of that new space. This kind of tool is sorely needed to renew derelict and outdated spaces, and we think it is appropriate in contexts where we'd want to balance preservation with a mix of building types. Our third tool is the M1A or growth district. Today's M1 districts in many ways are obsolete. They lack intermediate density options and have onerous yard and setback rules that make it impossible to build modern versions of loft-like buildings that we see historically. So the growth district is designed for industrial contexts where we want to take advantage of the job creation that can come from higher densities and a mix of business types. Lastly, we have the proposed C7 district. This is not an industrial planning tool, but rather a new type of commercial district that borrows from the loft-like envelope of the growth district to enable a wide range of business types. Notably, this is the first commercial district that doesn't allow residences, giving planners a tool for areas where we want to see significant job growth. I'll close by sharing a roadmap for the process to come. After more than a year of getting in front of as many audiences as we can, presenting our ideas for solutions to the problems that our businesses are facing today, and soliciting your feedback and questions about these proposals, we're in the process of going before every community board in the formal public review. This process will culminate in a city council vote on the proposal sometime next spring. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and Jose and I are happy to take any questions that you have. Thanks.
So I see some questions Jose was answering in the chat as he went. If people still have questions in virtually or in person here, please raise your hand. You can use the raise hand feature under the reactions tab in Zoom, or you can just raise your hand in the room and we will call on you. And I think we'll start with committee prerogative here. So, all right, starting with Barry and then Elizabeth. Barry's got a list. He's got a list and we've got a list.
Such a long list. I'm trying to figure out where I started now.
Transient.
Yeah, transient accommodations. Which I think was like back in Prop 3 or 2.
And Jose did say something in the chat. Can you just reiterate that? What you mean by transient accommodations? That was proposal
Hey,
wanna say
how are you?
2.
Yeah, and we can refer back to you know, the actual. We can have the slide open just in case to refer back. Nice.
Yeah, just give me 1 second, sorry.
I have it as page 11 in the draft.
And you know, the transients and accommodations are under use group 5, which is like the hotels that are used primarily for transient occupancy.
What does that mean as compared to a regular understanding of hotel?
That's a good one. But I believe, I mean, I'm trying to look at, you know, this is prevalent to the existing zone resolution 3214. And give me a second right now. I believe I pasted in the chat that it has the particular requirements or like definitions of what the here is. Oh no, this is only definitions.
Because hotels require a special permit, right?
Yeah, and this will not be changing. You know, the process, and I saw that question also a little down in the chat. So like this is not amending the ULURP process. So this will, what is this proposal is doing, and that's what I wanted to refer back to this slide, is allowing the transient occupations in C1 and C2 districts because they currently are not allowed. They're permitted in, which I believe in C2s, but no in C1s.
But, so I guess one question is, we're talking about C1 and C2 districts, but that would also apply to overlays of C2 and C1 in residential districts, right?
I believe that's correct. Correct, Audrey?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could potentially be expanding if you had a residential district that had a C2 that had a C1 overlay. This proposal might open it up to uses for a hotel, whereas currently that would not be allowed. It would still be subject to a special permit for a hotel, but it would be permissible to apply for that permit.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Basically, I guess the impact of this, of proposal 2, like if you had an R7A district with a C1 overlay, right now you couldn't apply for a hotel special permit because it's not an allowed use under either R7 or C1. But
correct.
If this proposal goes through, you could apply for a hotel special permit because it would then be allowed under the C1 overlay.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. That was question 1. There's got to be a better way to do this. So one of the general questions that I think apply to a couple of these, especially when it comes to like jobs and manufacturing and commercial things in residential districts, I assume that some of the provisions that were put in the 1961 zoning code were because people had concerns about commercial traffic, if you will, like foot traffic, elevator traffic in a residential building where people had their homes. Is that concern addressed at all in these, or is this like proposal, I think 5? If we can go a couple slides up to proposal 5. But I mean, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you see my notes, or can you see the full presentation?
All we see is the slide.
Okay, fantastic.
And we can't see the chat here in the room.
Got it. Okay.
We can turn on.
Shut up.
Sorry, Barry, which slide did you want to go to?
I think it was under proposal 5. Oh, well, yeah, 5 and 3. Like, but generally this idea of both expanding commercial activities in-home, like apartments that people use as their office or studio or whatever, and also commercial activity on upper floors. Like, I presume that a lot of this got into the zoning code originally because of concerns about traffic inside people's homes where they live that, you know, result in noise and long waits for the elevator and all of these other concerns. And so my question is, you know, not having read the text amendment yet, are any of those concerns still addressed, or are we just deciding that they're not important enough to have in the zoning code? Are we including new regulations or tools for DOB and DEP that will handle those concerns? Like, how is, if I'm a person who lives in a residential building that's going to see more commercial activity in it, you know, what recourse do I have to make sure that this is still a place that is my home and, you know, I'm not subject to a ton of noise or other issues?
Yeah, so I mean, and I can let Audrey also respond to this. There will be measures in place. A lot of this language is, you know, something that already exists in special districts, especially in, you know, I can think about in East Harlem and, you know, 125th special district. One clarification that I want to mention in here is also that, you know, because this is being allowed to locate the commercial over residential, doesn't mean that that will be the case throughout all of these developments. We have a similar question in CV1 and also in CV11, you know, like the 125th special district has been available for applying to this type of mechanisms since 2008, and we haven't seen much of this type of development, perhaps because of, you know, the availability of being limited only to C4 and to C6 districts and not allowing to have the 6-1 and 6-3. So that's one caveat, but there is, you know, requirements in the text that will allow that will be very specific to circulation, accessibility for residential and commercial spaces, as well to noise, vibration, and other mechanisms that I can get to the specifics into the chat because, you know, for me to remember that it's very, they're very technical and they're part of the environmental assessment statement.
Yeah, just to add to what Jose was saying, given these rules about separate entrances, including elevators and lobbies for some of these higher intensity uses, it's pretty unlikely that these rules would allow existing buildings to divide floors, you know, given the requirements for entrance and egress and circulation. So these rules are far more likely to allow this kind of split to happen in a new building or one that's converting use. And yeah, and so you would have, for these higher intensity uses, you would have separate entrances to the business and the residents. And for, you know, home occupations, this is for, you know, for example, an architect who wants to, you know, work out of their home office. They're not this would be in a lower intensity district. You know, they're not necessarily receiving a stream of clients. They're not, you know, they have a pretty quiet computer-based job, and this would just, you know, permit them to use their home as their place of business.
I mean, that makes a certain amount of sense. I'm just trying to find the home-based stuff is which proposal again?
It's proposal 5.
11, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, yes. So, I mean, like, I'm thinking if you had a barber business in your apartment like, on the one hand, that makes total sense. You can cut your hair in people's you can cut people's hair in your kitchen. On the other hand, if you had like a lot of clients coming through all the time, I can see how that would be annoying to your neighbors if it were, and this, you wouldn't have the benefit of separate entrances and separate elevators and stairwells and things. And so I think like a general theme of many of these proposals, not just 11, but also like the amusement and entertainment related proposals, I think that because for us in CB9, almost all of our commercial space is an overlay on a residential district, with certain very few exceptions, maybe in Manhattanville. Like, noise is a big concern because people live in the same building, and these are not new construction buildings. These are pre-war buildings by and large. And we already have issues with bars in particular, certain small, like a very small number of bad actor bars and instances that are not respectful of their residential neighbors. But you could see this, you know, if it resulted in a bunch of new amusement-based businesses on the ground floor of residential businesses or residential buildings, that like this could become a greater problem. And so I'm just wondering, you know, you've mentioned, I don't know what the ABC regulations and right to know regulations you mentioned are, but I'm wondering if there are, in parallel to this zoning text amendment, changes to either the building code or, you know, environmental and noise regulations that are going to ameliorate some of those potential problems for people who live above a commercial, like who live in a building that's residential but has a commercial overlay.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I'm pasting a little bit of information in the chat too for general information to the people in here and in the public. But one thing that I want to clarify, and also, you know, we are in the middle of the public review here, and you know, we have been talking to the community and taking feedback. So in our understanding of the Department of City Planning, we believe that, you know, the new uses or the expansion of uses that we are allowing in C1, C2 districts, you know, are generally good for the neighborhood environment, but we welcome feedback. If you see particularly something that is a challenge, you know, used to be introduced in this you know, C1 districts, and to preserve the character of the neighborhood, please let us know. You know, we had a similar case before we entered the public review when we were doing the initial what was it called?
Spoken.
Info sessions. When, you know, the auto businesses and repair of auto shops, and that was kind of like taken back and kept within a particular use group that allow in a different type of density. So, you know, we're open to feedback for this. You know, none of the regulations and enforcement will be changed. You know, essentially right now there is the existence of, you know, the compliance for when you are applying to a business permit, or when you are putting a use group, like, you know, applying for this particular type of use, you will have to certify and have manufacturing activity, I believe, that have, you know, no emissions expected under the requirement of DEP, air quality regulation, you know, the emissions, air contaminant environment ratings, and the right to know concerns for potentially you know, hazard materials. So all of that is staying in place. It's not being something that, you know, we are like removing those barriers or those protections for safety and
well, I mean, I'm not sure I'm concerned with like manufacturing safety, although I mean I am, but that's not my question. So I don't want to suck up all the time in this meeting. So I just have two more questions. One is about 12 very quickly, which is the streetscape stuff. And you use the example of the CVS and the Manhattanville, the Forum.
Mm-hmm.
So the CVS, interestingly, what's the caption on that? What does it say? The use case.
It's a Rite Aid at 145th and Broadway.
Yeah, it's a C6
A
3X.
closed rate, but
Yeah. But so I think the reason that was a C6 is because it was a theater. And so, you know, that was an entertainment building. And if you imagine for a moment that it was in use with its original use group designation, like, it kind of makes sense to have a blank wall against the street because it's a theater. And so I guess one question is, how would that impact, you know, how would that interplay of expanding amusement group, expanding places for a use group of amusements to occur, but then also the streetscape, how would they interplay? And then also, can you explain kind of the building you have on top there, which is the Forum at Columbia? Is that an example of good streetscape, bad streetscape? Why is it here?
Yeah. Sorry, can you clarify the question? I'm not sure I'm understanding the question about the amusements and how that relates to the like the ground condition. Could you clarify that?
So the proposal would be to prevent like large stretches of blank walls in certain commercial areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're also trying to expand amusement use group locations, which may require blank walls or so how does that interplay if you're trying to expand and allow an amusement use for, let's say, a corner commercial overlay building, but you also don't want it to have an unbroken street wall of 100 feet, like, how does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So the Rite Aid that I showed was in the like a tier B street. And so that they do often overlap with the C1, C2 overlays. But I use that as an example just to show, you know, what maybe a suboptimal streetscape condition would be, and how you know, that those types of blank wall features could be prevented by you know, by the tier B design regulations. And to answer your question about amusements, I think that this you know, we have to take into account like a huge variety of streetscapes. And I think that I hear what you're saying, and I totally see what you're saying about the, you know, the blank wall situation and having these, you know, larger ground floor amusements. But I do think that you know, it really depends on the type of building and the lot, and, you know, the blank walls, like you know, that won't be the situation for every building. But I think it's a really good question, and we can definitely get back to you with more information.
Okay, and the last question I'm going to ask, I have a lot more written down, but I've already asked too many. The micro distribution part of proposal 14.
How is that any different from dark stores?
Well, how is that different from dark stores, but also, like, how does the stuff get to the micro distribution point, presumably by truck? Like, what are we accomplishing with these? Like, how does this achieve the goal that we were going for?
Yeah. So I think so this would be this truck here on this slide is an example of you know, what we don't want to happen, and something that we would want to limit, or that we would want to, you know, reduce the instance of with the zoning proposals. So the micro distribution would be, it could be cars and trucks, but it also could be, you know, bikes and e-bikes and things like that are less, you know, large and sort of space intensive. And yeah, But I can my computer's taking a moment to load the resolution here, but I can get back to you.
I mean, I guess, just my question is like, how does this stuff get to the micro distribution facility?
Because that was the problem. But half the problem is that all
Right.
of these trucks were
Mhm.
parked in front and it
Of the
was
GoPuff and.
Right.
of the papered over store. I mean, we have,
Right.
Audrey, I mean, this problem, I live on Convent Avenue, and there is a corner where all the FedEx or UPS, I forget which truck it is, I think it's FedEx in the morning. There's like 3 trucks, they dump everything out on the sidewalk. They hover on half the sidewalk, cause it's a narrow street, and then they like sort. So like, it is definitely a problem, but from what I remember in the pandemic, and Gail Brewer was really out to stop these papering over businesses. I don't remember them being in our
GoPuff,
district.
Gorilla something. There
Yeah.
was one where where Cafe One people have their new Harlem Shake
Oh,
thing.
right.
That was a GoPuff spot for
Right.
whatever. It was
Right.
a dark store.
Dark store.
So,
Can I ask another question? Audrey, do you know
Sure.
if the city is in conversations with FedEx, UPS, Fresh Direct, that they are interested in opening up micro distribution facilities?
That's a good question and one that we have not gotten yet. So I will get back to you with an answer to that.
I mean, but this to me is like a very difficult. It's hard to imagine this being a positive just because of the experience we've already had with dark stores of like, I don't want more things being delivered by bike and e-bike to have more bikes on our sidewalks, which is a constant complaint that I get from people. And like, I get that deliveristas are making deliveries and sometimes they are on the sidewalk, but like, I'd rather see the UPS guy like pull up his truck and park or even double park and like unload things and drop them off into a building than hear another complaint from like a 77-year-old who had a hip replacement that she has to scream at bicyclists on the sidewalk half her day because she's worried they're going to knock her down. Like, it's out of all the proposals, this one seems like the least likely to be beneficial to anyone.
And then
I hear
can
you.
add, like the micro distributions, someone is somewhere in an area is gonna get overloaded with those micro distributions. Like the facility, so it's gonna be super concentrated for a particular area. And then we go into like equality, like,
Right.
Yeah, we know where those are going to get super
Right.
located.
Right.
And they're not in, they're not going to go on West End Avenue or.
Right. With congestion pricing coming and all of that, I mean, yeah, everything is gonna be outside of that zone.
Right.
I don't know.
And one of the measures for that is, like the restriction of size to having the micro distribution being, for C1 to C2 districts to a maximum of 2,500 square feet, of total area in here to minimize the oversaturation of these facilities in the space, and also to, if they are particularly located in smaller scale commercial districts per se, what they can deliver will be different than, like needing to have many trucks or many, bikes. And this is getting kind of like into prediction of the future. And I think, that we had a really good conversation yesterday with Community Board 1 on this, because, we really don't know what's going to happen in the future and determine what will, happen through this specific, creation of one micro distribution in a corner, and if it's going to drive so much business that it's going to, create some type of issue. So if it's not going to, be a desirable business for anybody to have micro distribution, facilities in the area. So it's up in the air in that rational But yeah, I think like the key here is the size of where they could be located. You know, you're talking about 2,500 square feet for C1, C2 districts will be kind of like the commercial corridors for this. Well, essentially those are intended to handle like groceries and you know, deliveries of food or things like that will be located and all onto like DOB already does this to their storage and facility type of use that they manage, but this will actually expand that type of like use group that can, you know, apply for a business license on that.
I mean, I think that the problem is when you say C1 or C2 district, what that means to us is a 6-story residential building with ground floor retail, which is like all of Broadway basically is a C1 or a C2 district. Or, you know, if our Morningside rezoning goes through, those overlays and like non-conforming uses will be brought into conformance. And so for us, like a micro distribution facility is a small warehouse. You as a resident, you don't go there as a customer for anything. Someone drops off stuff there and then it gets brought to wherever it's going as an end use. It's a mini warehouse. And like, we don't love that in a residential district.
Right.
For various reasons.
No, and I definitely understand it. I mean, this and kind of like tying it back to the last a conversation that we were having in terms of the tiers, this will also be regulated to the streetscape rules that, you know, they would prohibit the whole blank or the dark stores and the screening regulations of the urban design or the urban fabric of the neighborhood. So this will be subject also to those regulations through the, you know, and we can go back to the that slide maybe, Audrey, you can help me out so we can connect the dots.
Yeah, hold on one sec. Sorry, which slide?
Where we have the urban design tiers.
Got it.
Oh, we pass it, yeah. So, you know, you have this essentially the ground floor within residence, you know, in specific, the minimum transparency, the parking enclosures, and all of this being taken in consideration for the actual pedestrian safety and also for the pedestrian experience, you know, this neighborhood. So that's being one-on-one on what is being, you know, allowed right now in C1 and C2 districts, what also regulating those, you know, particular urban, what are we calling this? Sorry, I don't want to mispronounce this.
The tiered streets.
Yes. Streetscape regulations, I believe, is one of the proposals or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. So that type of, you know, regulations that are going to be in place.
Can I just ask something to these two people? Have you ever walked on Broadway in 130 something? Either of you?
I have, and actually, you know, I live around Harlan.
Have you been to Picante?
Sorry?
Have you been around there? Have you talked to the people who lived around those facilities, that restaurants, for instance? They make noise non-stop. And people have talked to them many years about it, and they've done nothing about it. You seem really unprepared or kind of like unwilling to see that we can see what's going to happen with these things, especially with bars and music and things like that, and people live in this area. So where are you going to put the people who live on top of these establishments? And what are you going to do when they can't sleep at night? We had residents coming to these meetings, a dozen of them couldn't sleep, and the people below them wouldn't stop making that noise. So you say you walk around there, but have you noticed the noise? Do you think your proposal is going to change anything? It's going to make anything better for any of us?
Well, you know, I walk around there. I don't, you know, live in the area, so I will be unfair for me to, right? It will be unfair to me to say that you know, dismiss any of the, you know, issues that are concerning the community. And I've been in a couple of meetings with you guys and hear you a lot of the things that, you know, come to the community. One thing that I'm gonna say is, you know, the distinction between what zoning allows and permits and what is currently happening is often not connected. you know, and you have said, and I share your frustration because I'm part of New York, and I also call, and sometimes 311, you know, gets overwhelmed with all these complaints. But you know, like, because these people perhaps are not following the particular zoning or DOB regulations, you know, that is part of the enforcement component that we are also being very mindful for. And I just want to bring you back, guys, to like last year when we were talking about open restaurants, and when we, you know, had the whole proposal to allow open restaurant as a right, but community boards and pretty much the whole entire public came out and say, we need a plan before we can actually approve this open restaurant, you know, program going forward. We need to have, you know, a consideration from DOB, have like, or DOT, have ensuring that they are, you know, capable and prepared to manage all these different programs. And the same is applicable to any of the text amendments that are coming to you in the public review in order for you to provide that feedback. And, you know, we are hearing a lot of this, especially in enforcement. You know, I want to say, especially with the EP and the DOT and, you know, police department and all those different things.
Have you called the police ever? Have you talked to them? Have you asked them to do something? Do they do anything?
Exactly, you know, and I think that is part of, like, you know, why we're battling here. This proposal is coming, and again, you know, from the allowing of zoning and what is allowed to do rather than enforcement.
So I'd like to continue questions from the chat, and then we're going to end, I think, with Liz and I and some of the questions we had going through. But if you have questions in the chat, in the virtual, please put your hand up. I see 3 questions, and I'd like to start with our committee member. I'll go to you after, Clayton. Ilana, let's start with you as a committee member, and then Tiffany, and then Yuen.
Okay, thanks. So I saw your response to my safety questions in terms, you know, I said, oh, I assume that, you know, DOB and FDNY, you know, that they would be involved in this process. However, your response said that it would just clarify, like, it's not going to create, I can't really, let me think. Can you still hear me? Because I want to scroll back to the
We
chat.
can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, but anyway,
Oh, muted herself.
Alana, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hate using this thing on my phone. I'm so sorry. So my question is, you know, my concern is rather that, like, it's going to really burden, like, I mean, I'm trying to envision how this is all going to play out, right? Because now you're going to have, like, certain, you know, manufacturing, whether it's light manufacturing or custom, you know, commercial or whatever, in residential spaces, correct? So an overlay, in that commercial overlay. So, like, how is that going to play out in terms of, like, you know, these agencies approving approving these businesses, right? Like, because some businesses use electricity, right? Like, if you're manufacturing, whatever, and you have an older building, okay, so they're going to have to go through, like, license application, you know, and license, you know what I'm saying? It's just, before it was a little easier. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't put it there because it was a ban on this commercial use. Now you're going to have presumably all of these applications coming in. So I'm just kind of concerned about, like, you know, it burdening these agencies. We already know DOB has issues. I'm not going to go there, but, like, you know what I'm saying? So that's a concern, because I hear what you're saying and it's all presented nicely, but how is this? I'm trying to think, how would this practically play out? Because I am concerned about safety. And then, so that's one. And then the other question was about the ULURP process, because one of the slides that mentioned, like, film studio and rezoning, and I can't remember, it said it would be presented to a board. It wasn't the community board, but it was some other board that you mentioned. So I know that ULURP, you know,
I wrote that down.
There's concerns about ULURP, you know, still being ULURP. Okay. So my question is, I want to make sure, right? Like, what's going to happen with that? Will it go through ULURP and all of that? So those are my questions. And I just want to say one other thing, you know, the whole e-bike thing. I know I don't think we have any regulations yet on the books, and I don't know if there's anything coming up in city council, but, you know, with all of the e-bike fires, you know, bike repair, we had that terrible one, I think it was downtown. It was in a repair shop or something. It was an e-bike fire. That's another concern of mine as well. So.
Yeah, and those are all valid concerns. You know, what I did say into your to your first question in terms of the the safety thing, you know, and things that are happening, that is being taken into consideration by existing regulations. And I was trying to find the, you know, there are particular values that, you know, a business, when they are, you know, putting their permits and going through the whole legislative process or ensuring they get a license or so, have to go through. And, you know, that requires architectural drawings and all compliance that I'm not very familiar with. I used to work at the Department of Small Business Services, but in a different division that didn't deal with that process. But I know it's a very, you know, overwhelming process, a lot, especially for businesses. And, you know, it's not easy to do so. And that is still being in place, you know, so that's not being removed. That's very much, you know, the first answer to that question. And, you know, we can get to more details, and we're taking feedback, and hopefully, you know, we'll ask the board to send us all your questions and the ones that we didn't get to in writing, so we can send something back to you guys on you know, an actual written format, so you can, you know, revisit this at a later time. In terms of jeweler, you know, there's a lot of things in here that are not, we're not changing any of the jeweler existing regulations for you know, different. We're not doing a rezoning, or we're not doing an actual action that is changing the particular role of the community board of the jeweler process.
I mean, you're obvious. I mean, this is going through jeweler itself, but then the whole point of this is to allow more things as of right that therefore don't require a jeweler for a BSA variance.
Exactly, yeah. But at the moment, for example, if you wanted to go and do a C2 district, you will have to do either a rezoning or, you know, or to allow a use group C2 and a C1 district, you will have to rezone the entire area, and the you know, that burden is not so much into the business, it's more into the developer. So that is kind of like where we see the expansion of the use groups and making sense between the C1 and C2 and aligning, because a lot of the need that we're seeing, especially local retail neighborhoods, that, and, you know, kind of like aligning the two uses within those two districts for that. So yes to that, in terms of like, as a right, more auctions for businesses to apply. I mean, I think in terms of the role for the community board, so liquor licenses are still going to come to the community board, because that's part of the state authority. You know, there was a question about a corner store, so that's being also managed through an authorization process. The transit hotels still remains in a CPC special permit. So things that are like existing on the requirement or the role for the community board to the extent of approval of particular uses, you know, if, you know, the only one that's coming to mind right now will be the Life and Science, but I believe it's still that has some, you know, a very particular way or where they can locate or not, given the districts. Yeah, I don't want to kick Ramal on this too much, because, you know, yes, you're right in terms of like, you know, we're allowing more things as a right, and we can argue that that's kind of removing the role of the jeweler process. You know, and now we're seeing us facilitating a little more of the commercial activity in the districts, or in all New York in general.
I mean, sorry.
Go ahead, Barry, comment, and then I want to do Tiffany, UN, Clayton, then us to end, and we need to be done in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this sounds like, a lot of this does sound like it would have some nice effects, but like the agriculture thing, this is Manhattan. It's the most expensive real estate in the world, and the only agricultural product that's high enough value per square foot to merit agriculture in Manhattan is probably going to be cannabis. Like, like there are just some things in terms of how we
bakeries and, you know, edible stuff.
Like there are just things about how we foresee this playing out IRL in the real world that give us pause and concern. I'm going to shut up.
Right. And I think, you know, I have been involved in the cannabis process and all of this. So for that particular, for example, yes, this, you know, doesn't differentiate between cannabis and other type of agriculture, but that's because zoning doesn't get into that, right? It's grouped under one use group. And just to highlight the, you know, there will be other type of regulations that will stand into the state licenses of growing cannabis and environmental review department of the Department of Buildings, the location between, you know, like the distance between schools and all different things that will be applicable to the specific type of business itself. And you know, like that's one of the things that I could say, just to clarify. But yes, you know, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and I think just to quickly add on to that, you know, we don't exactly know what's going to happen in the future, and you know, the zoning resolution we're working with now is, you know, twice as old as I am, and so we don't know what the, you know, in 60 years from now, whether, you know, indoor agriculture will be something that will be, you know, profitable or desirable, you know, activity in, you know, a place like Community District 9. And then also, you know, there's very niche applications of this too. If someone's, you know, trying to grow like, you know, a perfect tomato, or doing, you know, which is, you know, is an actual business, like the growing of, you know, perfect vegetables and fruits. They might need like a highly controlled and maybe not, you know, very large space to do that in. So just to give that one random example, it's not, you know, we're just trying to think of the biggest possible picture.
Continuing on, Tiffany and Yuen, please keep it short. One question.
Yeah. So Audrey, did I hear you correctly when you said that you referenced the Bahama Deli on LaSalle as being an example of a small business that closed down as a result of the zoning laws?
No, it was a hypothetical. Let me pull up the map here. It's definitely not closed.
You don't need the map. Just please repeat what you said briefly, very briefly.
So there are certain districts where I'll just pull it up, where if a space like this were to close and it's in a higher like an R8 to R10 district, if the storefront that is a non-conforming use is vacant for more than 2 years, it can't be reoccupied.
It can't be reoccupied by a business, you mean?
By a business, but then also you get conflicting regulations where you couldn't just build an apartment, at least under current zoning, on, you know, in that space. So essentially you get these.
A lot of I just don't see how that hypothetical is even relevant, because a lot of landlords rely on commercial spaces for the bulk of their income. Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't even see why that example. Okay, so just briefly, how many small businesses, especially in a neighborhood like CB9, did you consult with when you were compiling data on the impact of zoning on small businesses?
Are you looking for, you know, specific businesses that we spoke
to? I'm just trying to make the connection.
Percentages. Yeah.
How these zoning laws will actually benefit small and medium-sized businesses, especially in neighborhoods like this one.
Mm-hmm. So I think it truly depends on the business. I mean,
sorry. I'm not looking for hypotheticals or speculation. I'm asking, with numbers, how many businesses did you actually consult with to get that data?
I hear you. I don't have a number on hand, but I can definitely get that. We'll reach back out to folks.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jose, I only have like 30 seconds because Yuen also has to speak, and we have other things on the agenda. The reason why I'm asking that question is because I have a small business and I speak with other business owners. And that seems so wildly far-fetched to me. I don't even see why we're having this conversation. One of the biggest barriers to small businesses in a neighborhood like this, do you have any idea what it is? Rent, commercial rent in particular. There used to be something called rent control for commercial spaces. It's bad enough in the residential area. It's much worse for small businesses. I spent a long time looking for a space where I could run mine. It was impossible. It's not zoning laws. Lastly, I'm a little bit frustrated with any type of legislation or any sort of change or what have you that's coming across as using fill in the blank, whether it's a small business or a minority, as the poster child to ram through these policies. But the truth of the matter is, not only do they not benefit these groups, but they actually hurt them even further. Most of the time, this is really to the benefit of the bigger corporate entities. We see it in real estate. We're seeing it here with small businesses, which, by the way, are the ones that are actually hurting them by destroying competition. We can all agree about the cabaret law being antiquated. It should have been repealed a long time ago. It happened in 2017. That was another example that I didn't really see why it was mentioned. But this is just, I'm sorry. Nothing that was mentioned in this text amendment seemed beneficial. If anything, I see more problems, more harm than good.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Tiffany. Yuen, you're next.
Thanks, Tiffany. And Tiffany, thank you, because those were some of the questions that I had. And they're really big concerns of mine, especially the question that I posed in the chat about introducing commercial activity into residential blocks. My biggest concern is that we're more than halfway into the review process. And I would bet my life on it that most of the people in District 9, are not aware that this is happening. I don't know what you're doing on the outreach, but, we can't, this process is moving very fast. And I think it's just to meet the mayor's, deadline, in time for re-election. But I think we need to meet the community where they're at, especially the businesses and the small property owners that have invested in this community. You're proposing a zoning change that will completely change the character of this neighborhood. People have invested in this neighborhood. And if you're going to do something, like I live on Hamilton Terrace, if there was a couple of restaurants or coffee shops at the corner of 144th, that would be very upsetting to me, not to mention the people on 144th Street who treasure that residential environment and quiet living that they've got. I don't know why the city keeps introducing these commercial tax, obviously it's to raise more money, but these commercial programs into residential blocks, such as car share, which has never been used, bike racks, and all of that. Sometimes we just want peace and quiet, on a residential block, and not having to deal with that commercial activity. And I think the effort, should be put in strengthening the commercial corridors. But you're proposing certain things are good, but there's a lot that I see here that would work against not only community residents, but against the small businesses. And I think halfway through the review process with a public hearing in January is just too fast, and there's got to be a lot more outreach. you know, I'm like fogged over with all of this information in the last hour or two. And for those, I have no understanding of, you know, zoning and land use and these letters, categories and stuff. Can you manage the average person out there? We've got to meet them, break down the groups, businesses, residents, whatever, and explain it to them like a 2-year-old. This is what you have, and this is what this might change. You know, this rush to get this proposal, you know, approved by the spring is just too fast, and it's to no one's benefit, especially when you're trying to change the character and the environment in which, you know, people have invested, whether it's business or property owner.
How long has it taken us to try and rezone Morningside Heights, Barry?
Do you want the long time frame?
I'm just saying, this takes years usually for us to get anything.
Barry Weinberg being involved.
Why are we? Yeah, it feels like a very rushed.
30
years.
Can I respond quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments and for the question. To specifically address you know, the concerns around proposal 16, this would be subject, you'd have to get a CPC authorization, and the community board would have to sign off on this. When we were looking for, you know, examples of this, I'm not saying this is the only one, but the only one that we could find in Upper Manhattan was one example of this on the Upper East Side near the Guggenheim. So I completely understand your concern, and you know.
Well, why have it? Why have it? And you know, this area is a target of developers. They'll buy a row house and try, you know, to do whatever to maximize their investment. Why have it?
So this would be a pretty difficult one to get approved in this neighborhood.
But why have it?
For neighborhoods that are low density, like, you know, Sheepshead Bay or Mill Basin or areas, you know, where people really do have to travel far. This would probably, and I would be a rarity in CD9. Truly, this was one of the only blocks.
Listen, we didn't think that, and I don't want to take up any more time, but we didn't think that we would be faced with a 28-story building as of right in Hamilton Heights, right? When we were doing the rezoning back in 2013. We didn't think that would happen, but the zoning allowed it to happen. So to say, you know, this is for low, you know, whatever neighborhood that have to travel fast to get a cup of coffee, you know, is of no comfort to me.
I just wanted to say, sorry, one clarification here, and I think it's very important to understand. So, you know, and borrowing from your point, you know, about strengthening the commercial corridors, this is exactly what this proposal is doing, within trying to avoid a rezoning of, you know, particular zoning districts, right? It's expanding the universal use groups in the existing commercial districts. We are not mapping the new commercial districts or, you know, new uses in residential districts. This particular proposal would allow, you know, for those locations at the discretion of the CPC and the community board approval, subject to community board approval, if they desire to do so, to have that option to do it, rather than having to do a spot rezoning, which has been something that we and the department had not been wanting to do for a long time, and we ended up having to rezone entire
spot rezoning has saved a lot of community changes.
I have a very specific, narrow question about what you just said. So you said community board approval. Here in the board, we hear that, and we're frequently faced with the reality of community board advisory opinion. Is this something where if the community board voted no, it wouldn't make it to CPC?
I'm hesitant to say that it will kill the project, because I believe it's still a subject to the, you know, the process of ULURP, which is advisory. in all the community board, and I believe it's the CPC also who have advisory roles. Oh, board president and community board, and I think it doesn't get into the CPC when we have actual, decision power of any project that comes to us.
But what about 142nd, Barry?
So wait, hold on. The way this proposal 16 would work, somebody wants to open a coffee shop, they put in the application, it goes to the community board advises, borough president advises, and then if the CPC votes yes, does it go to the council or is it just done?
It depends. I mean, the text is still not drafted yet. I deal with CPC authorizations that die at the CPC, and there's some refer out authorizations similar to like POPs, and they had to go to city council. It depends on what, the actual text will end up being. And I think, this is a good opportunity to require, some type of language that will add and not wanting to get into how you're going to vote on this, but also the other question that I wanted to answer in the chat, which was, what can the community board do now about this specific proposal? Yes, this is not ULURP. This zoning text amendment are non-ULURP, but the public review is, taken in consideration, similar to what a ULURP process would be. So, we're asking community boards to actually issue a resolution with recommendations, similar to what you will do with any other project that comes to the community board. Your yes with conditions, no with conditions, approval unless, and all the different, dynamics that you can do on this. One other thing that I also wanted to highlight, we just heard today, and I think it was like 2 hours before this meeting, is that the City Planning Commission is also expanding their review process, given that we have heard from so many community members that we need to actually have more time to review this proposal in detail. We don't have a final date or, an actual to what extent is being expanded. That I believe is going out tomorrow to all district managers and other, city officials. And if, at the latest on Friday, but, we were working with January 8th as a deadline. This is being expanding a little more. I just pasted in the chat our revamped text amendment, which includes the text and the zoning text and annotated, which actually, highlights each of the changes on the text amendment, use group changes, all the recordings from different community boards and discussions. I heard some people ask about like, who have you been talking to? So they're the supporters of the text, which are mostly business improvement districts, and we can argue if they actually do represent businesses or not. But we do have all these new links and new information in our new website, and I invite you all to get around that, all those links, because I found the annotated text especially incredibly helpful to just look at what's specifically changing in here to compare it to the proposals and see what I might disagree or agree with what's being presented in here.
So the text amendment text is on that page.
Yes.
So it is spelled out in the text then whether or not. What is this new? Can you minimize the chat for a second? Create process for allowing new corner stores. So CPC authorization. My question was just, do CPC authorizations, if the CPC says yes, is it done? Or does it go to the council for final approval, like a text amendment or a rezoning?
Right, and the answer to that is depends on how the authorization is drafted. So like, right now, what the text amendment is saying, there will be an authorization for this, but authorizations typically have, and I don't believe an authorization has been drafted for this. Let me see. Okay, so no, this is docs. This is hold on.
Because while you look for that, from the community board's perspective, we have no influence on the CPC other than the persuasive voice, words and our voice. But if we work closely with our council members, we have more influence in the council. And so if something has an advisory opinion from the community board, but then a deciding opinion from the CPC without going to the council, in some ways that's worse for us than a regular community board, CPC, council, mayor path.
I mean, I think
there's no language right now in the actual, development of the text. And I think I can come back to you on this, about if we have a draft or what the authorization will be. Typically, when we drafting a text like this is, that section gets amended to say that, you need to apply for an authorization by, and then there will be typically, the findings that the applicant has to meet and different things. And sometimes in there, it will say CPC authorization, like it says here, but I've seen it within the findings that says needs to be referred out to, city council for approval in 50 days, typically how we do a city council refer authorization for pubs, right? So I don't want to say yes or no to this one. I will follow up with you for sure on this. But again, I think open-ended for this, if it is, and then on the CPC authorization or city council, I think what you said, what works best for you guys should be part of the resolution. If you decide to approve or disapprove this application, or, I think we will welcome your comments and your resolution greatly. We had used this in the past for like carbon neutrality. We included all of those and share all the information with our team. And I think that was incredibly helpful. So we welcome this. I think, we can say maybe we don't want all corner stores all together, but if you have any feedback on this, we'll definitely welcome.
So we're looking at a change in timeline though, correct?
An expansion. I want to, change. It says we might reduce it. It is expanding for sure. It's coming hopefully by the end of this week. It's going to be official, but we just got that language today. And we also were told that we can communicate this to our partners and community boards. And I'm extremely grateful for that, because, it's a battle that I am here trying to defend this text amendment with having, being a person who has drafted the text on this. So I really relying on my partners in the community boards to actually, provide this feedback and ensuring that we Audrey and my other planner too, Trevor, make sure that we are sharing this. We commissioners and also our team.
Got it. I want Clayton to get his question in, and then we're gonna end up here, and then we're done, because I want to get out of here by 9:30 at the latest.
All right, I'll be very fast. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think a lot of these changes are great. I'm very excited. I don't know if you'll answer on this, but for proposals 5 and 11, have there been any studies or projections done on impacts to the housing stock? If say businesses are able to expand those second floors, or people are able to convert half of their units to businesses instead of a quarter, do we anticipate a reduction in housing units citywide given the current lack of affordable units?
Which proposal was sorry?
Proposal 5, so allowing commercial activity on higher floors, and also proposal 11, which is allowing people to convert up to half of their apartment floor area for office space. Is there a concern that this would reduce residential footprint?
Yeah, I had the same question yesterday. We didn't have an answer for this specific number. As you know, we are also rolling housing opportunity. There is also the MX manufacturing to residential study that's being, put in place by the department, especially the Manhattan office, who's leading that study and estimating that 3 million square footage of resident commercial space that could be converted to residential. So I think there is definitely something that we have flagged directly to our the people who are working on the draft of the text to see if we can get those numbers and the estimates. But I think what we had heard yesterday is that it will conflict between the allowance or the creation of more housing by allowing commercial uses in those residential spaces and floor area.
Thank you.
All right, so up here on me and Liz's side, we carry on with Clayton's. Definitely had that concern about this proposal 5. And in fact, I have noted this in our notes, but Liz, why don't you take a look at your list here, and if we missed anything from what we talked about last night, I'll fill in.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of like, individual concerns. I just think overarching concern is that what you are asking, you're presenting to a community board to provide to changes in the law to provide more things to happen as of right. And or without the community board's feedback. And in my experience, CPC is ignoring community board feedback blatantly. When a community board says no, CPC moves it forward anyway. I mean, even when you have a city councilman who says no. So I think overarching, I don't want to give up any of the community board's powers at all. And I think you're asking a lot of us. And what I really am going to be looking for is what you're giving to us and how we can protect the residents of District 9. It feels like so many of these proposals in here need a lot more detail so that we can feel like that if there is an opportunity for a proposal to go sideways and to cause harm, that there are aspects of the law that can change or get things back on track. I mean, it's all very alarming. And the one I'm just gonna pull out is proposal 17 that totally changes RFA based on some business who has some business that they want to go up higher and they don't want to they can't deal with the setback. I mean, my background is in historic preservation, and the thought that a building, the 28-story building on 153rd Street, 153rd Street, that more things like that can happen as of right without the community board's consent, not even our feedback, but our consent. There's no way I can say yes to that.
Yeah, I believe this will be a waiver. It doesn't particularly say if it will be a special permit or a certification. I would like to get into that. Audrey, does it say anything in here about BSA permit? Okay, sorry. Our location is.
And does the BSA permit require approval from the community board?
I believe so, yes.
It requires that they come before us.
Right, like the auto
But
people.
we have very limited, we have even less leverage, so to speak, over the PSA than we do the normal Mueller, because it's really meant to be a legalistic assessment of a property owner's injury and then pathway to.
And again, the impact and the size, right? It will scale to a CPC special permit, which has the whole Mueller, processing here for that. Sorry?
But we haven't gotten the answer as to whether or not the CPC permit goes to the council after it hits CPC. I mean,
the permit does. The authorization. It depends if it's for this one for bulk modifications. Waivers, I am not sure, but a special permit it is a fully ULR and it will go to the through the city council.
So,
I mean, I get it, like Whitestone, College Point, or Wastelands in terms of land use. Like, I get that.
That is not my understanding of the CPC special permit being approved and it going back to city council. Because this just happened in another district. And after the CPC approval, DOB approved the demolition permit. After CPC signed off that they're not changing the special permit. It just.
Was it a renewal of a special permit?
It was a renewal.
That's why.
That's
Because-
that's the difference.
Yeah, it was already approved, so it's essentially a modification to the special permit.
Yeah, minor modification of a
Mhm.
total gut of the largest public space. No, 60 Wall Street.
Oh.
60 Wall
Unless
Street.
a special permit is an amendment to a special permit doesn't trigger another ULURP.
Right, but they could just say anything is a minor modification and kick
If
it
there's an
through.
existing special.
If there's an existing, yeah, I mean, a minor modification of, and in the largest,
Two Bridges,
the largest pops that you love that architecture.
no, but
Uh,
but Two Bridges was an excellent example of this. Like 2 or 3 70 to 100-story towers for a minor modification to the Stewart Park urban renewal.
And
area.
I think that's really the concern of like, we are the voice of the community. We understand the needs and the challenges and the concerns of the community. And it's just very concerning to me that so much of this is going to remove our ability to comment. And so I would just say back to you, if there can be more written into the text amendment that includes the community board approval, I think that that would be very helpful.
Yeah, we should we should continue to chat about that, and definitely if the board or anyone else has additional questions or other comments or concerns after this meeting, please feel free to reach out.
I have one more question. Has there been feedback from landmarks or how do historic districts are they impacted by all of these proposals? I think I only saw historic districts mentioned maybe once or twice
In the non-conforming.
in the very beginning proposal, but like this proposal says nothing about historic districts. 17 that we're looking at.
And Amsterdam, some of those buildings are in the historic district along the commercial corridor.
Yep.
And that came out too, and I want to just answer the historic context, because one of the things that I did talk when we were presenting in this and trying to get feedback was like, we already have a lot of existing protections because of the historic district designation in this area. And this amendment will not overrule LPC regulations that are existing in this place. So for example, in this case, particularly, if somebody who wanted to change this within the historic district, this will not apply to them because of the overrule LPC regulations.
Yeah.
Although the BSA is usually has more power.
I don't know if this is a good example, but on the corner of 141 and Convent Avenue, there is a row house that is owned by City College. I assume it's zoned residential. I don't know if it has an overlay in any capacity because it's now owned by an institution. But City College wanted to turn that into an office building and not residential anymore. In order to do that, they have to abide by ADA rules. And in order to make that building accessible, they had to put in an elevator. And when the proposal with the bulkhead for the elevator went to landmarks said no outright because the bulkhead was not conforming to the historic district. So I don't know if that is a good example of how it could impact. So, and again, I'm back on proposal 17 of like, you have a use or you have some business that requires a larger footprint and not a setback, and that they can go through and get a special permit to allow that, and that would override landmarks.
I worked on that project, and I think at the end of the day, we did end up approving that.
They might, yeah, they did. Actually, it was a big I remember Dr. Griffith screaming at the meeting.
So why did it never go forward?
I think it didn't work out financially for City College, but I think what happened was they didn't come before the community board with that proposal. City College didn't, before it went to LPC, it was a big shanda because we're like, what the fuck? Sorry, but you know, like what the hell, you're supposed to come before us for landmarks reviews, and they're like, oh, well, we sent something to your office, but no one ever called us. It was some bullshit, anyway.
So Jared,
Yeah, that's right, Barry.
But Jared, you did approve that.
Yeah, it's quite some time ago now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good old days.
Yeah, it was a while ago. But anyway, I think that's just, it's a good example for Jose to consider landmarks and this proposal 17, and would it override landmarks jurisdiction?
You know, I asked our counsel about this afternoon when I read through that, and he said it. You know, the language is a little confusing, but it doesn't override us. It's kind of weird that we're in that. I thought mentioned in that, but it doesn't change anything.
Can the BSA override LPC currently on issues?
I don't think so, Barry. To be frankly, I don't think it would.
I mean, they can override the zoning. So
BSA. Oh yeah, true.
To an extent, though, it's what it's called a variance and not a rezoning. You know.
Right. No, but the BSA is like legally, it's there to be the safety valve that stops our whole system from being unconstitutional. So you can very easily imagine someone telling me they can overrule LPC so that the entire LPC validity is protected. I don't know if it's true or not. That's why I'm asking. But
we'll come back. So we have December 12th to come back to you for another meeting, and perhaps yet another one before, you know, now that we had extended the review period for this. But I believe your next meeting is December 12th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh, she's got it.
Right. So if you could send us these questions, I mean, perhaps this reading sample also for us to take a quick look at, to come prepared to have a little more discussion. I'll try to get, as I said to Tiffany in the chat, the perhaps a list or something that, you know, businesses that we had talked to or who had attended these info session meetings, or any future plans that we're doing. I just want to, you know, there's some comments in the chat about, you know, perhaps the, you know, DCP not actually listening to the community board. I just want to, you know, reemphasize that we are actually here. We want to listen to you. Like, I think, you know, I have been in DCP for about almost 5 years, and, you know, I haven't seen yet a project within, you know, my tenure that we have, the community board has said no and has passed.
Jose and Audrey, can we have you come back for a special forum meeting for our community? Rather than our meeting, a public meeting with our community,
dedicated
separate from, dedicated to this, not in our meeting, housing meeting.
Right. You know, I'll have to check internally to see if we can get some other people too. I just want to also emphasize the trainings for, you know, the info sessions are in that link that I sent early on the site, which might be even more helpful to distribute to, you know, everybody within the you know, your committees. You know, I would like to come and answer questions. I think that's what I can do best rather than present it. But you know, we'll work with Audrey too. We have other also community boards to do all these rounds, and I'm also helping other community boards in Manhattan with this tax amendment. So, you know, I don't want to commit right now, but I'm more than happy to actually, you know, facilitate the discussion. But I will make myself available for the 12th for sure. And you know, that is definitely a yes. I had that in my calendar. You know, and we'll talk about we can coordinate, Audrey and I, and with Signy to see when you had the other dates in mind for us to come and attend.
Okay. Anything else on your side list?
No.
Okay.
In the meantime, we can spend the next month reviewing the 1,127 pages.
It's 1,100 pages.
1,100. Okay, yeah.
Audrey, you mentioned a website at the beginning, XYZ or something, where you could look at the zoning. What was that website again?
Yeah, so it is Live XYZ. And if you search for vacant in the search bar, it will bring up the vacant lots. And then I'm also gonna pull up, stop share. There's also a map database that DCP maintains on GitHub. Just give me 1 second to find that and I can drop it in the chat.
Thanks.
Vacant.
They launched this like beginning of 2020.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
They pay a private company that gets very frequent updates on whether or not
I remember learning about that.
Yeah.
If you wanted to hear something that is also, full circle, I actually work in the team that drafted a contract for Live XYZ back in SBS for the Neighborhood Development Division back in 2017 when we just first approaching, and I think we had the first contract in 2018. It was back in the day.
I
believe they already have a contract with the city now.
Yeah, I feel like the community boards were briefed on this in like 2020.
Yeah.
Or late 2019.
We should keep going. All righty, guys. So thank you very much. To be continued.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Two. All right.
Please don't kill me. But can I speak for 90 seconds?
New business?
The 5G thing on new business.
Oh, under new business? Yes, so we're done with presentations. The only other thing I wanted to mention was there is talk of a co-naming of the street for April Tyler. I just wanted everyone to know we want to move that forward. We're trying to figure out now what the next steps would be. It might be like we write up petitions and things like that. So we'll keep you abreast, but we're all on board with that.
I move that we pass a resolution calling for 138th Street between Hamilton Place and Amsterdam Avenue to be renamed April G. Tyler.
Which is where April's HDFC building lies and would be more than appropriate. Of course, we want to talk to her mother and family probably to, see if they agree, but I
withdraw my motion. 90 seconds. Victor has asked me to coordinate between housing, zoning, and land use and landmarks and parks preservation and uniform services transportation regarding public comment for a federal comment period on the stupid 5G towers. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they are 2-story like utility pole looking things. There's one of them now on Amsterdam and I think 119th Street on the uptown side of the street if you want to look. They are for 5G. I do not believe that 5G gives us extra like heads or arms. However, this is done so that the company that owns these towers, which is not the city, will then rent them out to cell phone companies to put up 5G antennas. The entire purpose of this is to bail out that company, which operates Link NYC, because they are bleeding money because no one's paying to advertise on Link NYC. That company is a subsidiary of Google though, so like them bleeding money is like, it's not a rounding error even in Google's cash or profits. So this is stupid. If the city wanted to, they could earn this money themselves by putting the tower things on their street posts. Many buildings, including co-ops and HDFCs, will get paid to do this by putting much less obtrusive things on their roofs. My building has a 5G tower on it. It is not a tower. They just like mount these little antenna panels
knobs
over the edge of the parapet. Anywho, do we oppose 2-story utility poles being plopped in the middle of the sidewalk to allow a private company to profit?
Yes.
Are you trying to influence us? But
yes. I'm asking the question.
Yes. is it coming out of our committee? Is this why we're?
The presentation was in the Parks and Land.
Our chair informed me that it was my job to do this, so here I am.
But it's not coming out of our committee, right?
Parks and Landmarks.
Parks and Landmarks. So
is there gonna be so we're gonna write a resolution, it's gonna come out of Parks and Landmarks, but you want it to be co-authored by?
I think it's due tomorrow.
Oh, fun.
Tomorrow the 16th. I don't know.
Tomorrow's the 15th.
As soon as public comment period ends. Heather, do you know when the public comment period ends? If you're still on?
she is not on.
Good for her.
We have 15 holder honors. You're brave souls. All right.
Anyway, sorry.
OMG.
That's
Okay,
it.
but
Does anyone support the 2-story foam poles that are really ugly? Even the feds were like, you can probably make this look better, please. Like, when the federal government thinks it's ugly, you have a problem. No, we have until the 17th, okay.
we have until the 17th. Do we need to make some sort of announcement tonight? About how we feel about this?
I move that the committee adopt a resolution opposing these towers in part due to their disruptive effects on the historic fabric of historic districts in Community Board 9, including the Morningside Heights Historic District, the Sugar Hill Historic District, and the West Harlem Historic District that is recognized by both state historic places and the National Register of Historic Places.
There's also a health concern.
Not really, but let's say there might be.
Does this need to be seconded?
Someone.
Yep, I'll second it.
This needs to be authored along with landmark.
Oh, it's gonna be a hell of a lot more complicated than this. Yes, I don't know why I'm writing it. Wickham told me I am. So here we are.
All right, so this reso will be drafted for general board on Thursday, is that correct?
It might be a very simplified version of what actually gets submitted, because like what actually gets submitted is gonna have to have evidence. Examples.
So based on what Barry just said,
Stop sharing your screen. I'm gonna bring up a picture of it.
got it.
It's so stupid.
Wow.
That's what it looks like.
That's a beaut. It's beautiful. We could put some murals on it.
Picture paints 1,000 words.
It actually looks like an Andy Warhol pop art version of a personal item that may be found in some people's purses. Now that I look at it.
Wow.
I think the Health and Environmental did a wrestle for those 5G towers too.
You did.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, so based on what Barry just said and a reso pending for Thursday, those in favor of a reso opposing this, these towers, please say aye.
Aye.
I
Thank you. Thank you. Do we need to go through committee, public and all
Request
that?
unanimous consent.
Requesting unanimous consent. Going once. Going twice. Passed by unanimous consent. Thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Old business, I hope we can run through very quickly. Did anyone have any legislation they wanted to bring to our attention? I'm gonna put the agenda back up real quick, sorry, forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, we still have to go back to the red zone.
I know. If no legislation we're looking at, developments we're watching, is there any updates on some of the developments we've been watching? Liz, you might have an update or at least info.
Yeah, so 142 and Riverside Drive, the demolition of 3 row houses as of right is ongoing. All of the cats have been, well, all except one, Norma's the holdout. She got out of a cage, so the developer has been asked to come to the community board. The last I heard, Sean Abreu's office was also asking the developer to present. We, as of right now, have no idea what the proposal is. There was, just to be clear, the original proposal that came through in a ULURP in 2021 was denied by both the community board and Mark Levine, who was our then city council person.
17 stories was not
It
in the
was
picture.
yanked, like that
Yeah,
actually
that's true. It was not.
he told them
He
he
yanked.
would deny it and they yanked it.
Yeah. They didn't officially go to the council.
So
So
right now we have no understanding of what is going to happen with the lots on 142nd Street. Olga, who's a community member, and I'm not sure if Olga is still with us. Olga she lives across the street. I do not live there anymore because my house is being demolished. My former house. And there's a lot of concern on that street about noise, pollution, and what's gonna happen. And I don't have any answers right now.
yeah, the developer's not very forthcoming. Now, under existing zoning, they can't go any higher than about 8 stories for anything they would build, but we have absolutely no idea what their plans are. They're not forthcoming with it at the moment.
Right, it's zoned R6A.
So you'll be at the general on Thursday and ask Sean about this, you said. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask.
Can I ask just really quickly, when you have rent stabilized units, don't developers or landlords have to present, can you hear me? Sorry. When you have, don't landlords or developers have to present a new proposal for what's going to be done with that lot before demolishing?
Not if that's right.
Although Tiffany's right in that there are regulations requiring DHCR permission, although that's for eviction.
They had to, there was an anti-harassment notice up on there, but that was, no one has lived in any of those buildings in at least 3 or 4 years.
Well, that doesn't shirk their responsibility in having to present an anti-harassment letter, no?
No, yeah, no, I'm saying it was up on the building.
Tiffany, most of what I'm seeing from DHCR only applies to occupied housing accommodations.
Okay.
So we should go in.
There are, there clearly what were examples of harassment, though. I mean, Liz, testified to that herself. So, anyway.
But I was in a market rate apartment too. Even though it was lower than market rate, because the woman who owned our building when I rented from there, it was owned by a woman. She kept the rents good because she was a regular person. And then, this developer was on the street. We all knew that he wanted to buy our building and kept saying to Lucy, our landlord, please don't sell. And then it happened. So that was that.
Liz, it's you and Signe and Barry. I sent you guys the FOIL documents from SHPO, but I must admit that I haven't been feeling well, so I haven't had a chance to read the documents. Have you guys been able to read them?
There was one, UN, I remember you sent me that email, and apologies, I had a crazy 2 weeks of work. I could not open the document that you sent. Were they FOIL requests?
They were
Yeah,
FOIL.
yeah.
I don't think I could open them.
They were zip files, yeah.
I think there were 3. I was able to open 2, I think. All right, let me pull that up again and see if there's an issue with, you know, the format.
If you're able to open the zip file and can send the files themselves, that would solve the issue.
Right.
Oh, right,
Okay.
there's one.
All right.
I think find it.
And maybe I just didn't try to open the zip. It's been a nutty. Oh, no, I did download it already.
All right. Well, we'll take a look, UN.
Yeah, I can see them now.
Are there any other developments we're watching, updates that people would like to give? Clayton, I know you did some great work looking at some things that are out there. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that was that shocking for us. I think there's like new permits at 1763 Amsterdam by like 143 lot, and then there's also.
Hey, you have your keys, Kurt? Okay.
You're out.
Well, as you know, we had a blast.
The holiday lights.
Oh, holiday lights was
right.
yes.
Fun.
Yes, it was nice.
And we've been having just as much fun as you right here.
This year, I was pleased.
Good.
Grand Houses joined us. It was great.
Excellent.
Juan Colmenares, how are you?
Okay.
We also sat through like an hour-long presentation by.
It was an hour and a half there.
Oh, wow.
Of like
I mean, it took us 2 hours.
It's
Tiffany's online. Hi, Tiffany. We miss you. Hi.
How are you?
I'm
Okay,
good.
I'm
How's
so-
everyone? I just see Tiffany. It's like, Chin, you. Hi.
We needed this good energy.
I'm sorry, we interrupted you.
No, you're good. No, we needed this good energy coming through the doors. So. You know where
Okay.
it is.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, your night.
Thank you, Etha.
Hi, Etha.
They just came back from the holiday lights on 125th, so they're in good spirits.
I thought the beginning of that.
Yeah.
Good thing. Yeah.
Anyway, yes, thank you. So
Nothing was at the front. Yeah, the construction permits were issued for 1727, I think. I think that was also expected, and yeah, otherwise I didn't see any. Oh, and then there's also permits for 521 West 134, which I think is the current community garden.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, which permits issued in October, November.
Okay. Alrighty then. The one sheeters for major projects, I know some people are working on those. Patricia, I think you and Andres are in touch.
Yeah, I'm gonna send them an email.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's just we're looking for one sheeters about the history of some of the projects. Yes, Juan.
I asked Barry to give me a project. He has it, so I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Send me the name and the address, and I'll start.
Yeah, it's some of the things that we've been working on the last year or so.
I think somebody got.
I'm trying to think maybe what a good one for you be that you know quite a bit about.
Anything on Convent, I know them.
Oh, you know, there is that, I guess, the corner that has all the activity, right?
140, 150.
Yeah, so we we're trying to find something Juan could work on for a one sheeter. I'm wondering about actually a one sheeter on know your rights as tenants, because you've been through that.
That's.
Just give me a building, please.
All right, well, the ones that we were looking to do, let me look at my list.
What about this new homeless shelter that they're proposing?
Oh, yeah, that's a thought.
What is that?
Which one?
129th between Amsterdam and Convent? Is that right?
Yeah, there's a Spectator article about it.
By the bus depot?
Yes.
So there was a suggestion, I thought, at the last meeting that that we ad hoc mapping the number of homeless or what do you call it? Transitional housing, supportive housing within all of us, that we take blocks, we walk it, we map it, and then we put it all back together again.
Well, we have a bunch of that junk, like we can just start with the Google map.
Do we have that already?
A lot of it.
Where?
What we won't have is the scatter type.
Well, yeah, I would be surprised if any of the ones on 142nd Street between my house and the Cats, if any of those are mapped.
Barry, the CPO had started an Excel spreadsheet, which I sent to you before you went to Japan. Because I'd gone online and listed everything that I could find online. And I could send it again. I think I sent it asking for you and a couple others to add those ones that are of that are missing. So do you want me to send that to you? And we have an intern who is doing an assessment, which I'm glad to see the presentation tonight, which there's a lot of data there that she can use, but we were going to have her do an overlay of the social services and transitional housing for the commercial strip, because they do impact the commercial strip. But the bottom line is we have a list, and I can send that to you and Liz and Sydney again.
No, I'm trying to find it right now.
Yeah, it was a part of the CPO the steering committee meetings, that the last one that you attended.
I didn't see.
Before you went away.
I've been so out of it.
So it might be from my HH or the info at Harlem one, info at West Harlem CPO. I'll look for it and resend it again. It's not.
That'll be helpful.
Okay. No problem. I'll resend it, and let me look for it now and send it.
9:30, guys.
Yeah, and my back is really hurting, so I need to get out of here soon. Can we, any updates on NYCHA? I asked Italy to go to those meetings, but I don't think Italy is gonna be with us for a while. It's leave of absence, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Any MHCC updates? Morningside Heights?
The rezoning walkthrough was postponed.
Okay. I haven't heard anything from Dan about RKO, so I assume the same applies as the last update. TIL updates. Anything of note?
No.
HDFC updates.
Did anyone go to that resort, the HDFC
I
Center?
couldn't make it this weekend, but we do need to chat with Vincent and just make sure that we're on the same page. He called me a while back and wanted to meet and just see what our priorities were and stuff, I think. So, okay. Just have to catch up with him. Okay. Film and TV task force, of course, Ilana's looking for any help on that to make that, was up there. I think it's the same thing. Ilana, how are you feeling?
Yeah, no change there. Same thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our action item, tenant right to counsel, Rezo.
Do you have the template?
Yes, that's what I'm gonna put up. It's on another place. On. I gotta find it. Hold on. Share. There, that is the template.
It's a PDF. Blah, 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 not paying counsel, eviction, legal, lawyers are good, counsel is good.
And you have Google Docs?
Well,
yeah, you know, copy and paste it.
Wait a minute, S6, what is that? S6678, that wasn't part of the presentation. Maybe that has.
Gregory's still on.
Yes, I'm still here. You could put in the new numbers. There's a note that there was going to be a new number issued.
Oh, so 6678 was an old number. Yeah. Because
Yes.
the new one is about the town of Putnam. Okay, yeah, so that's fine. Wait, go back to the template.
I've copied and pasted it. All right. This is now in a Word document.
All right, let's see. Lawyers are good. Right to counsel works. Deficit of affordable housing. Right to counsel, ensuring all right to counsel for all New Yorkers pending, therefore be resolved. Okay, so we should add a new whereas clause that talks about whereas tenants entitled to counsel but who have not yet received counsel frequently find that judges begin their cases. We're gonna have to clean this language up, but the summary of it is that like judges allow cases to proceed even for tenants who should have free counsel but don't yet have it because the system is backed up. The judge still allows it to go forward. So the landlord has a lawyer, but the tenant still doesn't. So we need to stop that, which is one of the bills. That's Bill S 3245. And then S 2721 is the one expanding counsel, which is what most of the whereas are about. And then we should add another whereas West Harlem is home to many small property owners and homeowners who face the threat of foreclosure.
I would add cooperators.
Yeah.
Homeowners and cooperators?
Yeah, like
cooperatives?
Yeah, cooperators, ORS. Who face the threat of foreclosure without any guarantee of legal representation, jeopardizing their homes and threatening them with homelessness. And then we, therefore be it resolved, we support S 3245, and we'll add the assembly number 2 to allow those tenants who have not yet been assigned council to get it. And we support S there, and then therefore be it further resolved, we encourage or call upon our state legislators to include.
I've lost my way, I'm sorry.
That's fine, but the summary of it is so that we know what we're voting on. That basically we're going to encourage them to include legal resources for homeowners facing foreclosure, in addition to the current proposal, which would expand the right for tenants making under a certain amount of money to have free lawyers.
Okay.
In foreclosure cases. I mean, eviction cases.
Starting 8 o'clock tomorrow, I'm out for the count. So who can help with this?
No, this is easy. I'm happy to draft.
Oh, you can draft this? Okay.
Just as a matter of convention, does your board generally mail the resolutions to the political delegation, the governor, the assembly folks? You do?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Over at Community Board 10, they just sit in a file cabinet. So thanks.
No,
appreciate that.
You got a long list of recipients. The office staff make sure it goes out.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're just going to have, therefore be it resolved, we support statewide right to counsel for all, therefore be it resolved, we support whatever that name of that bill is. That's the one that allows courts to adjourn eviction cases until the council actually gets assigned. And therefore be it further resolved, we strongly encourage the legal services created to also support eligible homeowners facing foreclosure. That's what we're saying. We're saying that we support expanding the right to counsel program statewide. We support allowing or making judges adjourn cases until people entitled to them actually get a lawyer. And we are also supporting legal services for folks facing foreclosure.
Anybody have questions on that? Gregory, does that sound like happy, friendly amendments to you?
Beautiful, just beautiful. Thank you so much.
All right, so proposing that if Barry can shine that up for us, shine the,
I'll put it,
I won't say.
You'll all sign
You want me to send you what I just wrote or?
We'll all sign off in like Thursday.
Okay, so with that said, since we want to, this was put on the agenda for on the executive committee meeting. We put this on the agenda with the understanding that we would make some friendly amendments. With that said, we need to go ahead and vote on this. So a move, yeah, Barry has moved. I will second. Oh, Alana seconded, that's fine. I will now take a vote. Thank you, Barry. All in favor of
Anyone opposed to unanimous consent?
Is anyone opposed to unanimous consent? Anybody have objections or anything they want?
The motion passes.
We're good. Unanimous consent passes, and this will go to general board on Thursday to be voted by the full board.
Are there any more action items? Is there anything else that we missed tonight? Dinner, yeah.
We're down to 11 folks. Y'all are the hardcores still online with us. Thank you for joining us.
I have one quick question.
Yes, lady.
For the text amendment, like what would we see to be the drafting resolution?
No, it's not.
Oh, we don't know.
It's nothing right away. It's the procedure is we now have a month to ponder. They're going to come back.
We asked them Well, we asked them to instead allow us to do a standalone public hearing just on that topic.
Sounded a bit hesitant on that.
Well, he said he was gonna go back and ask, but absolutely more people in this community need to know what is in, that text amendment. I mean, it's just massive.
And
It is.
1,127 pages is bigger than ZQA and MIH combined.
Yeah, which took us how long to get?
Yeah.
A really long
Yeah.
time.
I mean, that was why last night we went through it and I was like, you need to tell everybody, like, this thing is a monster. Like, I think we read through the first 3 and I was like, okay, we're done. And then I was like, oh my God, there are 18 proposals in here.
Yeah.
Like, that's absurd.
Yeah.
That's absurd to propose. I mean, whatever, I get it, but way too much.
I mean, and it makes sense, like if you're out in Bumblefuck, Brooklyn, and you want to have a coffee shop on the ground floor of a townhouse because there's no bodegas in whatever godforsaken part of Brooklyn has no bodegas, I get that. But like, it doesn't work for us because all of our commercial districts, or almost all of our commercial districts, are in residential districts. They're overlays. They're like, they're meant for ground floor retail.
And Tiffany made the same point that I did, was that they didn't reach out to businesses to ask them what their needs are. Like, they didn't ask any of the delivery companies, like, what would you like to do? How would you like to modify? Like, is this even interesting to you? They didn't ask any current businesses and neighborhoods. Didn't sound like it.
It also just sounds like it's really theoretical. I just want to see how, my concern is, how is it going to play out practically? You know, like these agencies are already overburdened with, I don't know, you know what I mean? I mean,
well, that's the point. They don't want to be overburdened. They just want to say yes.
Well, right.
This is like the city of yes.
But this is the issue with oh, well, it shouldn't be in the zoning text. Okay, well, none of your agency counterparts are equipped to handle where it should be handled.
Exactly.
And none of them, and all of this agglomeration of power into the CPC to grant special permits. Like, the CPC is a completely unresponsive body. You know, they're representatives from the real estate industry selected by the mayor and the VPs, and you know, it's like the worst of the board of estimate with none of the benefits. So to answer Clayton's question, if they give us that hearing, then we can craft it. But you know, we're gonna have to look at the 1,127 page text amendment. We're gonna have to find all the little Easter eggs in there that they didn't tell us about.
Which Barry is very good at. You
really him under the bus right now.
Sit, like, come on, look at that smile.
I think we have another person in the room that likes finding Easter eggs.
I think Clayton actually probably be good at it too.
And then we gotta write what we don't like about it and what we do like. What do we do with this with the carbon one? If you look at our carbon neutrality text amendment, that'll be an example of like, hey, there's this Easter egg in here that's bad for us. We don't like it. We want to remove it.
I guess the reason I'm asking is because I remember part of the process is CD resolution or CD settings resolution, I think.
And then I heavily modified it.
Oh, okay. I think at the meeting it was just one modification, then we heard more after the meeting. Anyway, sorry, I don't know. There was.
Yeah, I mean, we basically have to like find the parts in the zoning text amendment that we like, or that we don't like, or that we wish would be changed somewhat. And then we've got to say how we want it changed, strike it, amend it, whatever. And then we submit it. And then this is also going to come before the borough board at some point. And they're going to pass a resolution about it probably, hopefully after we pass ours. And then, depending on how far we want to push it, then we have to show up to the City Planning Commission public hearing and argue about it. And then we got to coordinate with our council members to make sure that they're pressuring the CPC. Because like the CPC is the body that sits on top of the Department of City Planning. Like the Department of City Planning is the staff for the City Planning Commission.
Right.
And the chair of the commission is the commissioner of the
Dan Garodnick.
Yes, who's actually a really good guy.
Yeah, he is a good guy. He landmarked the building for me.
Yeah, no, he's like
when he was a city councilman.
He's probably the best DCP commissioner we've had in a really long time. Like Bloomberg or before. And I think they're gonna try to be thoughtful, but the problem with DCP is you've got a bunch of like people who went to grad school and now they want to take their graduate seminar thesis and put it into the zoning code without necessarily thinking through how it plays out in the real world completely.
Exactly.
And I love reading graduate school theses, but just not in my zoning code.
And it sounded like Jose Crucios is the author.
No,
No?
I mean, there's probably 100 authors.
Are we still recording?
Yep. Yeah, we haven't.
We can, so.
Move to adjourn, so, yeah. Move to adjourn?
Mary, Liz, Signe, I just resent that Excel spreadsheet with the social services
Can we move to adjourn?
directly.
Yeah, there needs to be a second.
Second. Patricia.
All in favor?
Aye. All right.
Meeting adjourned.
Adjourned at
Thanks,
9.
everyone.
What is that?
Thank you, everyone. That's at 9:20.
Bye, everyone.
So Tiffany said I should save the chat. I
Yeah,
saved it.
That's a very important chat. And we'll
Show
send it
chat. So how do you do that?
Oh, if you go to the, well, you can, I just did it on my computer.
Oh, you
too,
did.
but,
You saved it.
If you go to the chat itself, I'll show you how to do it though. And go to the
out.
doc.
They were really unprepared. No, I mean, you know.
I mean, I think it's already saved. This is the CD9 computer.
Well, if I'm gonna present something to you, I know what kind of questions I'm
Okay,
gonna
bye,
ask.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
So,
Good
like,
night.
what happens to
Night, night.
the stores that are not